Can you please state your full name, when and where you were born?
I am Mario J. Dell'Acqua. I was born in San Diego, California, thanks to the foresight of my parents who moved here from New Jersey in 1922. And I was born in 1924.
And what's your family background like? Did you live with both of your parents and how many siblings?
Yes, I had 4 siblings and my parents until I was 12. My mother passed away when I was 12. And then we've lived in San Diego all my life.
And did you have brothers and sisters, or?
Yes, I have. I had 1 brother and 3 sisters.
Okay. And would you say that you were working class?
Yes, basically we were. When my dad could get work, we were working class.
Okay. And were you affected by the Depression?
Well, money was short. My dad was in and out of work. Whenever he could get a job, he'd take it. Otherwise, there was no work available, really, in San Diego. San Diego was maybe not as hard hit as some of the places in the United States, but it was still hard hit.
What was your pre-war level of education? Where did you stop before you entered?
I had gone through the public school system in San Diego, graduated from San Diego High School in June 1941, and I entered State College, San Diego State College, in September of that year. And I had gone to starting of my junior year when I was drafted.
So you were a draftee. You did not enlist.
Well, what I did, no, I didn't enlist per se. When it came my turn, I was 17 when the war broke out. And by the time I came to 18, they wouldn't let you enlist anymore. They just drafted everybody, and then the services took whatever they needed. While I was at State College, I could have joined the V-12 or there was another program. The Navy was V-12. I forgot what the Army was. But they wasn't going to let us go through and finish our degrees, and I didn't feel like I wanted to wait that long to get into the military, so I volunteered induction. I was allowed to do that. So I was inducted into the Army March of 1943.
And what were your thoughts on the war before you were actually a part of it?
Well, I knew what was going on in the world. I had studied history in high school, and I knew that what was going on was not good for the rest of the world, what was happening here. And I saw it sort of a prolongation of World War I, really. And a lot of the animosities and problems that had come up after World War I were just being carried forward to World War II.
And did you, when you thought about the war, and for 2 years it went on before you were actually in the service, did you think about being in the service as a burden? Did you think about it something down the road as an exciting adventure, or?
Well, I don't think I thought of it as a burden. I thought it was something that everybody should do, and that when your time came, you just did. That was it.
Which branch of service did you enter?
Army. The Army.
And how did you choose that branch?
Well, that was one choice I had. I did not want to go in the Navy. I was from San Diego, and I had no desire to join the Navy, nor did I want to join the Marine Corps. And I wanted to go into the Army. So when at the induction center, after the physicals and everything, I chose to go into the Army.
And where did you start? Where did you?
Okay, I was first sent to a little place called Dayton, Washington, which and it was a subsidiary. It was an old CCC camp we went to, and we were, I can't remember the company, but we were with the 752nd MP Battalion. We went into the military police. Stayed there, it seems to me it was a couple of 3 months or something like that. And one day we were all told to put on a Class A uniform, get out spruced up, and we went before a board of officers who were in a room, and they picked out a group of men to go ride trains. We became MP train guards during the war. What had happened, I guess, is I'd heard the story, a bunch of GIs on a train in the south somewhere got good and drunk, and they threw the brakeman off the train, and the rear brakeman, and in those days he was a very important person. There was an accident that occurred. One train ran into another because the fact the brakeman had been. So that's when they decided to put the MPs and the SPs. The shore patrol was on the train with us. So when I was sent to Spokane, Washington. We rode the trains out of Spokane up to Butte, Montana, Havre, Montana, and as far west as Ashland, Oregon, down to Pendleton, Oregon. We were on the trains quite a bit of the time. And our primary function was to keep peace and order on the train and to check passes, leaves, that kind of thing. The SP usually helped with any naval personnel, and we took care of the Army mostly. Although we interchanged actions from time to time. We didn't have too much trouble. Liquor was the biggest problem. You guys get a little blasted.
Mm-hmm. How long did you have that assignment? How long were you riding those trains? Wow, 13 months.
Well, 13 months altogether, I guess. Yeah, it was close to 13 months. Great. It was good duty. I had nothing wrong with it. We were paid per diem because we were away from our base. And our first sergeant had gone to we stayed in different hotels at night, and he'd go there and make arrangements with the hotel manager, and we paid 50 cents a night to stay. And I think we were given $2 a night to stay, so we were making $1.50 there, which is a lot of money. And but it got to be boring. Not boring, but what would you say? Wasn't enjoyable. I didn't like to deal with drunks and stuff like that. I wasn't cut out to be a policeman to start with. And the SPs we had were all ex-policemen from the northern area of the country, the northwestern. Out of Seattle, Spokane, and they were older than we were. We were just 18-year-old kids, 19-year-old kids. Excuse me.
So, for 13 months you did your...
Right. What had happened is I got put into this small... It was just a company. I don't think it was a full company, just a bunch of them. Young MPs. Probably the nicest outfit I was in. We had nothing to worry about. They were all picked. They were handpicked by these officers for education, general appearance, and it proved that it was right. We never had any problems in barracks with a lot of problems that we had later on when I was with a different kind of outfit. Everybody was intelligent enough to coming out of the rain, so it was a nice outfit.
Were you given any specialized training?
No. One day, we were in camp, or Dayton, Washington, and the next day we went to Spokane. Oh, yes, I don't say any specialized training. We had been trained as MPs, but we were being trained in riot control, things of that order. Nothing to do with what we were doing on the trains, which was sort of a public relations thing more than anything. And we used to have these guys come around. The Army sent them around, and they check your records, and they want to know, they ask me, what are you doing here? Riding the trains. Well, you shouldn't be here. You should be at OCS. You should be MP OCS. You should be in the Air Force. I said, well, tell the captain. And he wouldn't let us go. He just wouldn't let any of his men go. So we were stuck in that outfit. There was nowhere we were going to get out of it. Because in those days, you had to have your commanding officer approve a transfer. So one day I was riding the trains. I had gone into Seattle. Seattle was our headquarters, Seattle, Washington. And we were at 9th Service Command headquarters there. I was killing some time, and I was in the day room, and I read the Army posted, you're supposed to have general orders posted in every day room that came through from higher echelon. I don't know where it came from. Maybe God, I don't know. But it said that you could volunteer for the infantry without going through your commanding officer. You just wrote directly to the Adjutant General of the United States. About that time, I'd had this business of being stuck and not doing anything, and not getting any promotions, nothing. It just, so I talked with a friend of mine and myself, and we wrote a letter to the Adjutant General of the United States. They gave us the address and everything. And the next thing I knew, I was standing in front of the captain, who was vividly red. He could hardly speak. He was so angry. And there on his desk was 2 envelopes that were my transfer, and transfer of my good friend Ralph Evans. And we were transferred to the 42nd Infantry Division that was just forming up again. It had formed up and was ready for combat, and they needed replacements overseas badly. So they took most of the division, except the cadre, and shipped it overseas, and they became members of other infantry divisions overseas. And we got there, it was July 6th, I think it was, of 1944.
D-Day, or June, or it was July.
Just after D-Day, yeah. And we got there, as I said, I was stationed in Spokane, Washington, and big thing that struck me was the heat. You know, this Camp Gruber is where we were. We went to Camp Gruber, Oklahoma, which was outside of a place called Muskogee, Oklahoma. It was hot as heck. But medical people took us guys from the Northern Command like that, and we couldn't do any duty for about 2 weeks. We just laid around trying to get used to this weather. It was just knocking us flat. And finally we got over it, and we got used to it, and we started infantry training. When I got there, I was one of the first group, Ralph and I. Then they were bringing in from the infantry replacement centers. They were bringing in great groups of people. And from the ASTP, the Army Specialized Training Program, they were closing down these colleges that they had opened to send these kids to college because they needed infantry replacements. They didn't need college students. And they sent a bunch of those guys. We had a bunch of Air Force guys who had just about completed their pre-flight training. And then we got a whole bunch of non-commissioned officers out of the Canal Zone, Panama Canal. They figured they didn't need as many men down there. They were guarding the canal. That's what their job was. And so we got this amalgamation of all these different people into the infantry, into the companies, the different companies and the different regiments to come up to strength. And we started our, supposedly our infantry training. Incidentally, up to this point, I had no field training at all. I've been in the Army now, what, 15 months. When I went to Camp Dayton, Washington, as I told you, it was an OCC camp, and there was only 2 companies of MPs. We did get some rifles training, but we didn't have rifles. We had shotguns and some old World War I British Enfield rifles that weren't given to the regular troops. When we went to the field for our first firing, they let us use some bolt-action 03 rifles because we didn't have any equipment to speak of. But then we got to the infantry, and we started getting infantry equipment and infantry training. Well, I'd been there a while, and I got word that the infantry, that there was going to be some paratroop officers coming in to get people to go into the paratroop division. And I was going to go down and volunteer for that. But on guard duty the night before I was to go down there, I was walking fire guard, and I felt this tremendous pain in my stomach. Something was not right, you know. I ended up with peritonitis in the hospital. So I was there for a long time. While all these poor guys were going through infantry training, I was laying in this hospital bed. So that was, you know, August. In September, they started getting ready for overseas. And then...
Before we go too far,
sure.
What was your reasoning for thinking about joining the paratroopers?
Just sort of a glamour thing, and $50 a month more pay, and I don't think I basically felt I could do it because I didn't know I had this business with this appendix, but I would poop out. But I just wanted to try it, see if I could do it. Yeah, and you know, they had fancy boots, and we had shoes, and that kind of stuff. So we got ready to go overseas in the latter part of September. In October, everything was closing down. Guys were getting leaves. And I didn't get any leave to come home. I had been in the hospital, and when I came back to my company, we had a pistol of a captain there, too. It seems like I always drew captains who were pistols. He wouldn't let me come home. He would give me a 4-day pass. Well, I was in Oklahoma. To get to San Diego and back would take me probably 6 days. So I didn't get overseas leave as other people did. And I got ready and we went overseas. We shipped in November, second week in November of '44.
Did you know at that time anything about where you were going?
No, we didn't exactly know, except we were shipped to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, and that seemed to be the point where you went to Europe. That sort of makes sense. If we were going to go to San Francisco, that'd be a different story, or Los Angeles, that's a different story. But at Camp Kilmer, we still didn't know whether we were going to Africa or not, except we knew by reading and by assumption that they needed replacements in Europe. The African campaign was all but over. Unless they wanted to train us in there, we had no reason to go there. So we were pretty sure we'd go into Europe. Pretty sure. we did. We spent 2 weeks on a boat. And
what was that like? Was there anticipation, excitement?
well, there was a lot of seasickness, I'll tell you that. we boarded the ship in New York Harbor, and they sailed north to Halifax, or outside of Halifax, Canada. We picked up the convoy, or the convoy picked us up. I don't know what the story is. We were on an army transport in General William Black. I think we had 3,500 troops on, and we started across the Atlantic, and everything was fine for about a day, day and a half, and then a storm whipped up, and it was a pistol, and most of the guys got sick. We even had Navy guys getting sick, so that's how bad the storm was. It was a terrible storm. So then, about 2 weeks later, maybe a couple of days short of 2 weeks, we cleared Gibraltar. So we knew we were going into Italy. We still didn't know whether we were going to Italy or to France. Well, we ended up in Marseille, in France. And am I getting ahead of myself anywhere here, or
you're doing
too
great.
far?
Go ahead.
We landed in Marseille, debarked on some people say the 8th of December, and I say the 9th, but by that time you're starting to lose time. I didn't remember for even a week after that my birthday had been on November 24th on the ship, and I had forgotten completely about it. Anyway, it didn't make any difference. I turned 20 on the ship. And they put us in a, call that damn place, it was on top of a bald mountain, that I remember. And all our pup tents were set. And we spent about the next 2 weeks or a week cleaning the equipment. We had just got finished gupping up in the States to carry it overseas. Well, they made us put all this cosmoline on it to prevent rust. Mm-hmm. Then when we got there, we had to de-cosmoline the whole stuff. It was a joke. But anyhow, we spent about, I think, short of 2 weeks on that hill, really just getting equipment together. We weren't doing any training or anything to speak of there. And then one morning, we went on with a convoy, truck convoy, to the railroad station. They put us on freight cars, and we started north. I remember going. Incidentally, southern France was a lot like San Diego, just beautiful in dryness, and in weather-wise, it wasn't as cold as when we started going up north. And shrubbery looked the same. It looked nice. Anyway, we got on the train and then started our adventure. We were on there maybe 4, 5, 6 days, something of that order. I really can't tell you. And we were to join the Patton's Third Army. Then we weren't in Patton's Third Army. Then we were back in Patton's Third Army. And every time we got into his Third Army, I remember we had to sew all our insignia back on. We got off his army, we took everything off again. Well, anyhow. So one night, we ended up in a little French town called Neuf-Château. And it was in the evening, late, very late. Well, of course, it's winter time there, and it gets dark fairly early too. It was just like a movie set, you might say. We pulled into this station, which had this glass enclosure for the passengers, and everything was blown apart. And it just finished raining. We got out in the company fronts, and my good friend Ralph, who was a nut anyhow, just as we got there, and by the time we got all organized and got everybody off and the equipment off the train, there was one big artillery duel going on somewhere east of us. And everybody was pretty quiet. You could see the flashes and hear the rumbles and everything was going on.
It's real.
So then they, as we stood there, the whole battalion was there. Ralph says that he breaks ranks and he goes up to the colonel in charge. He says, "Okay, Colonel," he says, "we believe there's a war on. Now let's go home." I thought they were going to get rid of him right there and then. So after we got Neuf Chateau, we finally got the transportation trucks again. Put all our stuff on it, and we headed east. We didn't know where we were going. In those days, it didn't tell you a damn thing. You couldn't say a damn thing, and you couldn't. You're not supposed to know anything. Well, I knew enough about the map of Europe in my head. I knew where we were. A lot of guys didn't know where we were. Had no idea where we were. So I took us with these trucks, and this was at night. And we got someplace at night. It was a railroad marshalling yard. Well, I figured I could read and understand some French. I'd taken French in college. And we were outside of a town called Metz, which is there was a big battle going on. And here we are, absolutely green grass troops. We jump out of they get us out, put our bags in one place, grab our rifles, and they issue us some ammunition. They bring us into this yard and disperse us. And the first order we got, if you see anything wearing white, shoot. That was our introduction to battle. They said, "What?" He says, "Yeah, well, the Germans were wearing white camouflage, and we weren't. So if it was white, you shot." Fortunately, the Germans didn't come, and we stayed there till the next morning. And the Army always moved us. They moved us almost always at night. So we got no sleep on these trucks, and not very good food because the kitchens couldn't keep up with us. It wasn't their fault. Well, there was a big. We didn't realize it because nobody would tell us, but unless years later we could reflect on it. This was the time, and you probably read about when Patton had to go north to help with the Battle of the Bulge. It's about that time they had drawn a lot of troops out of them.
Are we at the end of December then? Are we?
No, this is yes, it is. It's probably mid-December,
okay,
not the end.
So it is the middle of the month. Yeah.
And so we're sitting there at Metz, and then they called us and back on the trucks again. So now where were we? Well, now we had been transferred to the 7th Army, General Patch's 7th Army. We were going down to the Bitch-Colmar pocket, they called it. This was south of Strasbourg, which was the main capital of Alsace in France. And they put us on in the morning. We drove, seems to me, all day. We stopped once, put us back on the trucks, and we finally ended up in this area. And it was starting to get cold by now. There was not any snow yet, but just darn cold.
Did you have adequate clothing, winter clothing?
We did. Fortunately, we had been issued a lot of stuff. And when we got, no, it was about a week after that, we had overcoats and some other equipment. But when we, about 2 weeks later, I'll get to that, we went down to calm by this hill, and these guy said, okay, dig in. Well, I was a pre